Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm excited about today's conversation. I've got back a guest who's been on the show 4 times back in 2016. So 10 years ago, I had Dr. Elizabeth Plourde on to talk about many things. The show of hers that I have shared the most over the last 10 years has been episode 25 on season 2 of the Fit to Love podcast called Natural Menopause versus Hysterectomy. And I've shared that with a lot of people because, especially with those of you that have been on this journey with me, maybe you're in perimenopause, maybe you're in your menopause, maybe you're not, maybe you're 35 and having issues with adrenal fatigue, or you're having symptoms of perimenopause a lot sooner, and there are reasons for that. Or maybe you're past that and your body's breaking down a little bit more than you think it should be based on the lifestyle that you lead, and you're wondering why. So I would invite everyone who's going to listen to today's show. We're going to talk about some medical things and introduce her to you. Actually, Dr. Plourde and I never did a video podcast. This is the first time that we're going to be together on video. But that was in October of 2016. Again, Fit to Love podcast, season 2, episode 25, Natural Menopause versus Hysterectomy. I'm mentioning it because we're definitely going to get to a little bit about that episode in today's conversation. Because again, I just want people to be, I want you to be armed with information that might be different than you're getting from your traditional allopathic doctor, which, for most of us in today's day, they serve a purpose, but they aren't the end authority, nor should they be. So welcome back to the show, Dr. Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. Having spent my life just delving into all the research on all this and piecing it all together, it's such a pleasure to be able to share it with the world, because the world needs it, needs all this information.
Let's talk about a little bit about your background and what got you to the point of wanting to share information with people, the things that you know, and the passion behind getting out information that others don't have.
I'm a clinical laboratory scientist, so I'm licensed in California, which is a huge license compared to all the other 49 states. When I took the other states for the exam for the other states, it felt like kindergarten exam instead of PhD, which is what California requires. It's just amazing what California has required for us. It's 6 years of college, not just 4, and you just got it. And then you intern for a year. And so it's a lot of learning. And then when I got in the lab and found out the laboratory tests aren't that valid, I was really depressed and dejected and thought, oh my gosh, I've spent all this time, all this money, all this effort my whole life. But then I realized when I got the ideas for the books that I've written, that information, that foundation and knowledge I can put into the books and share with people, because we deserve to know the truth, and we are not getting the truth about our health and medicine. We're just not. It's a tragedy.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you back is that you and I had a session last year about things that were going on with me. And I remember you mentioning without prompting about how the industry changes based on what pharmaceutical companies want to sell you. So today's first initial conversation is about cholesterol, triglycerides, about statins, and how that most of us, because again, people, they trust their doctors. Whatever their doctor says, they listen to, and they don't question, which is half the problem. But you had made a comment, because I've had high cholesterol, if you will, and I'm okay with that, because I know functional medicine and integrative medicine looks to have, because you make hormones with your cholesterol. So we have this, and this is not a new conversation. Dr. Davis has been talking about this. Dr. Johnny Bowden's been talking, like there are Dr. Sinatra, there are books that have been going on for more than 15 years addressing this, but it's still not mainstream knowledge, and nobody wants to challenge it. So let's talk about the progression from when you were studying things and researching things, and when you saw a shift and why when it comes to cholesterol, statin drugs, things like that.
Well, I became acquainted with lawyers who specialized in helping people sue the medical community, sue doctors who they feel hurt them. And I had been hurt by a doctor. And so I was talking to them about it, and they were saying that they were working with a man in his 40s who was fine. The only thing that he had was high cholesterol, and they put him on statin drugs, and in 30 days he was dead. So they were working on a wrongful death suit for him. And as I researched what statin drugs do, there was no doubt that the statin drugs were the cause of the problem. And we're not warned about that. We're not warned about the side effects. In fact, there's side effects on the literature that they wanted to take off because they said, oh, these aren't side effects of the statin drugs. Well, there's a lot of side effects of the statin drugs. When I was on a book signing tour across the United States, 25,000-mile trip in 25 states, and as I went around talking to the doctors, talking to the OBGYNs, talking to doctors in all these states, they were all upset because they realized they were getting patients who had such a low cholesterol that was their problem. That it was way lower than it should have been. So when I was interning, and I hate to say it, it was 70 years ago, when I was interning, cholesterol normals were 240 to 280. Mine was 250, and I was very comfortable with the 250. I have not allowed my cholesterol to be taken. I'm in my 80s now. I'm not allowing my cholesterol to be taken because I know they'll demand that I take statin drugs because I'm at 250, and I'm very happy at 250 because we make all our hormones. Our brain runs on the cholesterol. We need cholesterol in our body, and to deprive people of this. But the doctors I talked to across the nation on that trip, they were so upset because these people were coming in barely functioning because they didn't have enough cholesterol to keep their body going. Below 200 is absolutely way too low. So it makes it hard to keep believing in our medical system because it is so off base. And I did a quick search this week in preparation of this, and I still can't believe the literature and what's on the internet. They're still saying below 200. And I had doctor after doctor coming in to talk to me saying, it's just below 200 is just way too low for people. And yet it's this many years later, and they're still doing the same thing. It's really a crime.
Well, statin drugs are a funnel for financial abundance for the companies, right? That's who decided it was going to change to under 200, right?
That's true. Yeah, right. Because my books that are on the shelf say cholesterol normal 240 to 280. They still say that. And that's where it was when I was interning. So it's a crime that they've done that to us.
What what do you tell people that, let's say, the layperson who's afraid because now they've been on a statin drug, their doctors told them that if they're not, they're going to have a heart attack, they're on blood thinners. Like, how do you educate them about like the positives of cholesterol and what the real contributing factors are to heart disease?
Boy, it's a hard one because it's so embedded. The medical community has done a good job of propaganda. It really is propaganda because it's not true, and it's harming so many people. So it's hard. It's a long, laborious laying out of the true facts, and so I really realized I should write a book about it. But I do have books that have already been written. Dr. Sinatra, you mentioned him. Dr. Stephen Sinatra, oh, it's over here, wrote The Great Cholesterol Myth. Can you
Yep.
read that?
That's the exact book I was referring to.
Yeah.
Dr. Johnny Bowden is in that too, right? Dr. Johnny Bowden.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're co-authors.
Yep.
Yeah. And
And
then
how old is that book? That book is like 15 years old, right?
at least,
At least.
yeah. I'm not sure. I didn't look at the date, but I've had
And
it a long time. I had to get all the dust off of it because it's been on my shelf for a long time. So, but yeah, no, we've known this for a very long time. Um, and then Dr. Sinatra also wrote the Sinatra solution to help avoid heart attacks and protect people. And CoQ10 is a big part of his program. And I, after I had my hysterectomy, I had immediate high blood pressure, so high they wouldn't let me leave the hospital until they gave me blood pressure drugs. And because once the uterus is very in charge of the blood pressure, and once they take it out, then you're sky high. And I was on blood pressure meds. There's 5 classes. Every single one made me so sick. I thought I'd rather have a heart attack or a stroke because I was so sick from them. I could barely move. I could barely walk. And then I was being helped with my mercury problem, and doctor put me on CoQ10. And a year later, I'm in my doctor's office and my blood pressure's normal. And I'm going, what's different? It was the CoQ10. So, and then we go on a trip, we go on our business trips and we're gone. So I don't bring my CoQ10 because it's refrigerated. And so I didn't take it for 2 weeks, and I had my visit with with my doctor, and my blood pressure was really high. And I said, "Oh, I haven't taken my CoQ10 for 2 weeks." Her answer was, "Just start on it again, you'll be fine." Instead of all those years of blood pressure meds that she had been forcing on me.
well, that's
So
good.
yeah, that's true. Uh-huh. But everybody should be told that. Everybody, because CoQ10 is a natural enzyme in your body that we need it, and we lose it as we age. So, and then we really lose it with hysterectomies.
Yeah, actually, I probably should have Dr. Johnny Bowden on and Dr. Sinatra to talk that a little bit more in depth. But I know you and I had that conversation when we were talking, and you said, yeah, that the cholesterol, that the pharmaceutical companies lowered the cholesterol range so they could make statins and keep people on these drugs. And I know that, I mean, I didn't know if someone had died. I'm sure, there are different responses, uh, extreme, and then there's sort of the middle ground. I actually even asked ChatGPT the other day of what are some of the side effects of statin drugs, because I wonder if like eyesight or things with your eyes could possibly because of a statin. My dad is on a statin. Hopefully he'll reconsider after listening to this episode, but probably not. He's a Taurus. He's very stubborn, and he believes his doctors no matter what I tell him. I'm not a doctor, so they don't believe me. But I will definitely get him some CoQ10. But he's got muscle cramps, which I know is definitely one of the most common side effects of a statin drug.
Uh-huh.
In being a researcher, you've seen, and being that you've interned 70 years ago, like looking at sort of the how the medical has been influenced over the years. One of the things that you and I talked about years ago, and again, it was this natural menopause versus hysterectomy, was this idea of bioidentical hormones. And a lot of people in my community, even people that I'm working with right now, people who have heard the conversation about hormones for years, but never were paying attention because they didn't think it applied to them. And I
Right.
thought, okay, maybe I need to say things differently. Everyone needs to understand that as you age, you're going to lose hormones. And if you do not replace them, you will have many side effects and things that happen. Now, there's a difference between synthetic and bioidentical, but why don't you tell a little bit about your story of how you even came to understand this? Because probably my guess is when you started, you listened to your doctor, you had a hysterectomy, and you probably didn't start with hormones because, okay, let's start with that story.
Right. I realized that I should never have had the hysterectomy. I didn't really need the hysterectomy. My problem was perimenopausal bleeding, I was bleeding so bad I had to stay home with bath towels. And so it was very inconveniencing. And so finally, after 3 years, every doctor I talked to, I went to a female gynecologist thinking, well, a woman will know. She had the same answer. Hysterectomy was the only answer. And so I finally gave in and had it. And I absolutely crashed, totally crashed. I was 43 and I thought the world, instead of being bright sunshine, was just nothing but black. So and the doctors didn't understand it. They just told me I was mourning the loss of my womb. That, get over it. That was the answer from them. And then when I finally found a doctor, she was in Beverly Hills at the time, and she got on a program for hormone pellet implants. They're just tiny little, like the size of a Tic Tac, and they're embedded under the skin and the buttocks, and they slowly dissolve the bioidentical estradiol, bioidentical testosterone over time. And 2 weeks on that, and I woke up and thought, there is a sun. I mean, it was that dramatic of how I felt. And so then I really got into a lot of that, of just delving into it, and wrote my book, Hysterectomy, Ovary Removal, and Hormone Replacement. It took me 11 years to write that book because I wanted to make sure that I covered everything so that nobody could challenge what I was saying, because we really need the truth. I just talked with a girlfriend of mine last night. She's the same age as I am, and I talked to her about how estrogen is essential for the structure in your eye as you age. Every system in our body needs estrogen. And they all use it in a different way. Our bodies are so awesomely designed. I'm in awe of our bodies, and she didn't know that. Most people don't know that, and I wouldn't have known that until I started having trouble with my eyesight. And now I need to take nutrients for my eyes, and the nutrients for my eyes are clearing my eyesight up rather than the lens removal that the ophthalmologist recommended. And
I want
so
to pause you there because I want to know about that. So, what are the nutrients for the eyes?
okay, Vision Live Max. It's available on the internet. And when I walked out of the ophthalmologist office, he threw at me, "You'll never pass your driver's test." And I started taking that Vision Live Max, and a year later, I passed the driver's test. So it's what they're taught in medical school is to promote their ability to make money on lens removal. And I have 7 surgeries, which I went along with and believed in. And before I found the things that help protect me from the radiation, those surgery scars would just hurt and burn and get red and awful when I was around radiation. And I can't imagine slits in my eyes. I determined I would never allow that cataract surgery because I don't want to feel that burning and awfulness where there's a slit. Because wherever you've got a cut, that's where the radiations can plow into your body. So it's no fun. So
Okay, so let's go back to, so you were on, I interrupted you with the hormones. Can you tell everybody the name of your book again?
it's Hysterectomy, Ovary Removal, and Hormone Replacement.
Hysterectomy,
His
hysterectomy over removal.
ovary removal, yeah, and hormone replacement.
And when
And
did you
then,
write it?
oh golly, long time ago. Sorry, I don't know.
Okay,
But
that's right.
I've also written EMF Freedom, Solutions for the 21st Century Pollution. And this is essential for everybody to read. It really is. It goes through what what the radiations from the cell phones and smart meters are doing to our bodies. Um, and it's terrible. There's a movie out. It's out right now. It's Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, and it's a man from the future coming back to warn us about how toxic and harmful electricity is, and that we should not get it. Um, it's kind of a weird movie, but it's a message that we all need. We absolutely need to cut back on our electricity. We really do. I think a large part of our kids' problems is because to do an ultrasound on all babies when very few need it, it's just, to me, it's a crime. And those little tiny cells all trying to form and change and be hit with that ultrasound, I think it's a large part of our kids' problems of not being sane, because literally they're not. They're just my grandkids, and my friends who are my age and their grandkids. Yeah, we're all struggling with trying to figure out how to help these people. And I think part of it is the radiation and the cell phones and the earpods and it's just, it's all been brought out with no warnings. And we need the warnings. We really do.
Well, we also, and I've done some other shows since you about EMF protection and really understanding the grounding and being able to test your environment. There's definitely is a multifactorial for some things, right? Because there's EMF, but there's also half the shit people eat, right? So diets are pretty terrible, and the additives and the preservatives and the dyes and the chemicals, so we have the endocrine disruptors and plastics, microplastics in our food, right? Like the list is really long of potential things that could go wrong. And not to depress everybody, it's that you can understand it, know it, and then make different choices. What happens is I think a lot of people don't, if you don't know about it, you don't factor it in. So you think you don't, like my mother made a comment, God bless her, about my grandmother who had dementia or Alzheimer's by the end. And basically said, yeah, well, she thinks that wasn't controlled or that you couldn't do anything about that. And I'm like, there are 10 things she could have done about that. I can tell you what she could have done differently about that. That is something that could have been addressed if anyone understood some of the causes of why that happened. Her mouth was full of mercury. Right.
Exactly.
Right. She
Exactly.
had a ton of amalgams. But we think these diseases are like we're victims of the diseases
Right.
versus we can be proactive about understanding how some of things works. Cancer, like when people say, oh, they get their cancer cut out. I'm like, well, okay, well, the cancer grew in a soil that had many factors to it. It wasn't just didn't happen yesterday. It's been growing for a long time. And if you don't change the soil, it's going to come back. You can get it out, but don't think that's going to take care of not changing the environment that it was created in the first place. So, so there, it's a little bit of a, people can only take in so much. Sometimes it's overwhelming. They can't take all the data of all the things that possibly could go wrong. But when you understand some of it, especially when you're dealing with it, when you ask the questions, why is it like this and why can't I get help? I do believe that there's always a way. There's always another way to address something that's going to help a situation get a little bit better until you get some more information. So I wanted to, I know we did that episode, the season 2, episode 25 on Fit to Love about natural menopause versus hysterectomy. And I don't remember if we talked about your book because I don't have your book. So I'm going to say I will put this book link in the chat for
Okay.
everyone. Definitely the EMF, but for this particular conversation, I wanted to focus on the two things that seem to be really prevalent in my world right now with clients, family, neighbors, like people who are overly prescribed statins, who are afraid of cholesterol. Mine's probably 250 also. It's probably, I definitely know it's around 230. And my integrative functional medicine doctor, we don't do anything about it because it's fine. Because I know I need my cholesterol but it's the idea of heart disease, and it's the people not understanding. And I wanted you to sort of be the witness to that when like you said, when you were an intern, that the healthy range was 240 to 280. That was what was considered healthy. It changed because somebody wanted to sell people statin drugs.
Exactly. And harm people in in that, because it is harming us. We absolutely need hormones. And in fact, one of the talks that I did, a man came up to me afterwards and he said, could it be I'm taking statin drugs why I can't have sex with my wife anymore? Because it makes testosterone.
Yeah. Well, there
And,
you
and
go.
doctors don't warn the people of that problem. It is a very, very difficult problem. And like estrogen is in every tissue of the body. When we don't have that, that tissue starts breaking down. The bones, the day we don't have estrogen is the day we start losing bone. Exactly. They chemically can see that the bone markers are gone. And it's every time I hear of a woman breaking her hip, I know it's because she hasn't had estrogen, because she's been told, oh, you'll get breast cancer. And that breast cancer scare was totally off base. They didn't use human hormones, and then said that breast cancer or estrogen causes breast cancer. And it really doesn't. This is the crime. We really need to stop listening to our doctors who were not educated that well. The PhD program that I and my husband were in, it combined Eastern and Western medicine, and Tibetan medicine makes the most sense. It really does. It uses tiny, tiny little things that look like peas. So micro doses of a lot of different herbs, and that gets us well. They go to the core. Where did it start? And it really makes the most sense. And that has been systematically been destroyed by the Chinese who took over Tibet. And I went to a Tibetan doctor for years, and her whole family was part of making the medical community in Lhasa in Tibet. And she went back to get more herbs because it's very difficult to ship them. And she said her uncle started crying on her last night. And he said the Chinese promised they would keep Tibetan medicine active. And he said they're systematically destroying it, putting it down to Chinese. And I've used both Chinese and Tibetan. Tibetan just makes more common sense. It's been around a long time.
Well, it's the difference of, Chinese medicine for 2000 years versus Western medicine for 200 years, but people will trust their doctor,
Right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
versus someone doing acupuncture. My mother actually said something about like my dad, he had a fall recently, and he just slipped on some ice. He was wearing dress shoes, and he's 80, and he was clearing off the car before going to church. And luckily he didn't fall on concrete or rock. So it was, a sprain, but I mentioned acupuncture. And of course, then he's on blood thinner. So then she thought about it and thought, oh, I can't, what if he bleeds out? I'm like, he's not going to bleed out with acupuncture. But again, this is the fear that people have. They have so much fear about things that to me are like ridiculous. She's had acupuncture. I have had it for 25 years. And so like if there's any blood, it's actually not a bad thing because heat's leaving the body, right? It's like a little, but no one bleeds out because they have had acupuncture. Anyway, but it's what do you say to the people who, when you talk about the hormone, because I have a particular group of people right now who, let's say, are going through some kind of cancer, and their spouses or their friends or their doctors say, no, you shouldn't take hormones because you've already had cancer or you have cancer and it will cause more cancer.
Well, if it caused breast cancer, 100% of us women would have breast cancer, because we all have estrogen high as we're going through puberty and growing up. We all have a lot of estrogen, and so why don't 100% of us have breast cancer? It's impossible to make it. And those of us, when they were doing the Women's Health Initiative, We knew they weren't using human hormones, and we knew that it wouldn't work well. And so we're connected across the country. And the day that they decided to abandon the trial, we were calling each other going, hey, they finally know it doesn't work. They finally get it. And all they did was reduce the dose. They didn't get rid of it. They're still using it at a lower dose. So it's difficult to understand our our inability to grasp the truth about health. It's because we don't.
Well, we have herd mentality. So when people, right, it's easier to trust the doctor who went through medical school, who, and then there's the God complex. And again, and back in the day, probably before the pharmaceutical company was what it is, right? Doctors were trusted because they did have your health and root cause in mind, but things shifted when it became big business to get people on drugs. People don't realize that they're, you and I had that conversation about fibroids and about, you know, what doctors know or what they don't know. And how many times I went into 3 different doctors' offices and they're like, hysterectomy, hysterectomy, hysterectomy. I'm like, no, 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 no. Right. And I just kept waiting until the solution that I wanted appeared, which it took 2 years, but I wasn't going to take it out. And because you and I had that conversation in 2016 on the show, here I am in a doctor's office. When was that? Let's see. I was with Doug. So it was 2019. So it's 2019. I'm in the doctor's office talking about fibroid embolization, which I had known about. And then the doctor I wanted to use, she stopped doing it. And so I looked for someone close and I went into this doctor's office and I had that conversation. And I thought I was in the twilight zone. I told her, I don't need to see the MRI. Will you or won't you do it? She didn't like that I was that direct about it because I think she wanted to scare me a little bit. And she basically said, I'll do it, but it's not my first recommendation. And I said, great. Well, what is? And she said, hysterectomy. And I was like, am I in the twilight zone right now? No, I'm not going to do it. And then I come up with all the, and then she sent me, then I went to a gynecologist because she needed somebody in case the big one in the middle fell and blocked and would cause sepsis and I was going to die. So then when I went to the gynecologist who was younger than me, and she's like, you scare me. And I'm like, why? And she said, because you have this one that's so big that's in between the cavity. And if we cut off the blood supply and it falls, it's too big to pass. And I said, great. Well, isn't there? And she said, and what was the percentage was low. I think it was like a 20 or 30% chance. I said, great. Well, that doesn't mean there's 70 or 80% chance it's going to go exactly the way that we want it to. And she said, yes. I'm like, great. Well, then that's what's going to happen. But I said, but just to make you feel better, can't we? And I started coming up with like different ways to deal with it. And I was told no, 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 no on all of my very creative ways to deal with it. And like they don't think outside the box. Like it's no, we get surgery or we remove the whole thing. And I thought, no, can we just get creative? And then she said, well, what about if I give you some progesterone? And at the time I got very excited and I was like, oh my God, yes. Is it bioidentical? And she said, no. I was like, you're killing
Oh,
me right now. So I said, but the only reason why she gave it to me was in case I bled out so that I would
mhm.
stop bleeding so that I wouldn't die. And you know the story. You and I've talked about this since then. I mean, it's just like one time after the other, I'm being an advocate. And one of my clients, although my community has not heard this whole story, so I'll keep telling it. One of my clients, a male that I was training at the time as a personal trainer, when I was done with the process, he said to me, I don't know that I don't think I believe what you believe, that everything happens for a reason or whatever about law of attraction because you couldn't heal or cure yourself. And I said, you know what? I understand that. And I think I was supposed to go through this because I have no idea how bullied people are and pressured by their doctors to do things that aren't good for them because they make them so afraid. I mean, I
Yeah.
had 2 doctors telling me, and then when I got to the hospital, same thing, like, doctors telling me I was going to die. Like, and I'm like, oh my God, you're all on crack. I'm not going to die. Like, I had no doubt I was going to be fine, but I got pressured by so many doctors, and the average person is not going to advocate for themselves like I am. They don't understand because they haven't educated themselves about what to do, what the options are. They don't know. They trust their doctors blindly. And so I'm advocating for myself. And I came out of that and I said to him, I was supposed to go through this so I can help save a bunch of uteruses because people do not challenge their doctors. My mother, I told her to go to the doctor years ago. I said, go get your hormones tested. She goes to her doctor, and her doctor says no. And I said, why not? She goes, the doctor said that they're all going to be low. I said, well, first of all, she doesn't know that. Of course they're low, but that's why, because we want to do something about it. But what I learned since then was that when a doctor refuses to test hormones they're not used to testing, it's because legally, if it's low, they have to treat it. And if they aren't someone who treats bioidentical hormone replacement, or they don't know what to do with it, or they don't believe in it, then they don't want to do it. So they're just going to say, no, I'm not going to do that for you because I don't believe in, or I don't agree with, or I don't know what to do with if it comes back in a range that makes me legally liable to do something about it for you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's looking at some of the, other aspects of what we blindly sort of delegate to people. And again, I think the majority of my listeners are not that, because I'm very buck the system, and not that not everybody is bucking the system, but like I think I said, someone asked me at my birthday party last week if I got vaccinated, and I said no, and I said I don't listen to, like, if a Western doctor tells me something, I question it the first time. My vet, the new vet, I didn't meet her, for my cat, he has some ear we think is skin cancer on his ears, and I didn't go to the vet with Doug when he took him, but her options were to cut his ears, to cut the part of, and I said, we're not doing that. First of all, skin cancer is a reflection of what's going on inside of you. Like, you can't just it's the whole terrain. It's not like the sun, otherwise, right? We don't have skin cancer. The same thing with with estrogen and breast cancer. If the sun caused skin cancer, we'd all have skin cancer. Yes?
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Right. It's not about the outside, it's about the inside. And the reflection that happens on the outside is because what's on the inside. But so anyway, I'm treating it with a bunch of different things. And I mean, it's getting better, but freezing it off was another aspect. But again, just like with a person, cutting it out doesn't change the terrain. So I'm changing the terrain and treating topically at the same time. So what are some other areas in which we kind of, like, things have shifted that you've seen in your 70 years of being in this profession that you want people to know about? I mean, I know the main things for you of what you've written books about. You've written books about bioidentical hormones, as well as electromagnetic frequencies. We've talked about the statins and them lowering the healthy range. Are there any other things that people should know that?
Well, two books I've written on sunscreens, because the sunscreens are just such an atrocity. I live in an area where there's 29 swimming pools that are open 12 months a year, 24 hours a day, some of them. And I moved in so I could swim every day. So, because I was traveling across the country on my business, and I'd come home, drop my bags, put on my suit, go down to the pool. I mean, it was just a total routine. But since sunscreens are now in the water, I get a violent headache. I've tried to go after a time of lots of gray clouds, so not a lot of people. I still get the headache. It's just the chemicals in the sunscreens are so bad. The aroma, the perfume. We were just on the beach last week, and I had to get away from the people because the smell of the sunscreen was just so obnoxious. And it's amazing how we've accepted this. And I watched some mothers spray their little kids with all this sunscreen, and they warn you, don't use sunscreen spray because it's going to everybody else on the beach, and as well as in your own lungs. And the thing that is amazing is that it actually causes skin cancer, and they don't warn you about that. They really don't. Melanoma, after sunscreens were introduced, melanoma rates in the United States started climbing because it actually causes skin cancer. And they're not using it the way it's prescribed anyway, because they tell you, put it on 20 minutes before you get out in the sun. And at our pools, I watch them. They get to the pool, they put the sunscreen on, get right in the water. And so it's all in the water. I got to learn to scuba dive when I was 20 years old. I got to see the gorgeous, gorgeous coral. Uh, Absolutely spectacular. So spectacular, my mouth would drop open because it's just like heaven down there. And I'd have to remember to keep my regulator in my mouth because, oh wow, that's gorgeous. But I've watched the coral die. I've watched the fish get sick. The turtles, the massive turtles, big tumors on their backs. The water's all cloudy because of all the sunscreen. And I've been connected to people in Hawaii who are trying to save the coral. And they said they shut down Hawaiian waters during COVID, so people couldn't go into the water. And they said they got to watch the coral recover because people weren't in the water. And now that people are in the water again, coral's dying again. So it's just, we really need to wake up. I was in the Bahama waters, and before sunscreens on a cruise. Gorgeous. Got to walk off the cruise ship to a gorgeous coral outlay that was just so massive. And every single time the person on the cruise said, put on your sunscreen as we were going off the boat. And 5 years later, I went back. That entire mass was gone, totally dead, just awful. And then about 4 years ago, my husband and I were in Florida, and we got on a boat that said the last coral uh, garden in Florida. And we went there, and it was just all dead brown. It was not beautiful at all because of sunscreen. And to have sunscreen even cause melanoma, and I try to tell people that, they don't believe me because the commercials are just so in your face. It's horrible, the indoctrination that they've done to convince people to use sunscreens. Because also, this is really harming our kids because they're very hormonally active. When I told my husband I was going to write a book on sunscreens, he goes, "You're a hormone specialist. What are you writing a book on sunscreens?" I had to be a hormone specialist in order to describe what these hormones are doing to us. They're making the fish intersex. They have both ovaries and testicles in the same fish because of the sunscreen in the water. And our boys don't know if they're boys or girls. I mean, this is the gender problem is so pronounced and so prolific. And it's sunscreens. And sunscreens, it's also what the estrogens in our plastic water bottles. It's our kids are getting such mixed messages, and hormones are so powerful, extremely, extremely powerful. So it's just a crime that we continue to allow it and support it.
Well, I think there's always going to be, I don't think there's a perfect world that we are like, as long as there's an agenda, as long as people, it's like doing what we're doing right now. If we're educating people that don't want to be a part of the agenda, or they're stumbling upon this because I've shared, like I said, I've shared the show we did 10 years ago a million times. With every new year, I get anyone who's dealing with menopause or perimenopause, or they're warning about hormones, or their doctor has said, don't take hormones. I'm sharing that show with them about your hysterectomy story and about your hands, and you're getting right? Was it the estrogen or the thyroid that your hands were all, your knuckles, weren't they?
Yes, estrogen.
Okay.
Estrogen is for the joints. Yeah.
Right. So, like I've shared that, and it helped people, ask different questions. Some people get so frozen again by not asking questions. They just do whatever they're told, but they're not necessarily feeling better or getting better. And hence that's why I have a show and keeps going. And it's been 11 years and we're not stopping because I want people to understand and to know. And I'm, trying to be the example and the advocate. So let's go back to you. You've been on hormones so at this point, almost 40 years.
Right. Right.
And do you take Like I have people who are in their 80s when I mention hormones, they're like, "Oh, I'm past that." What would you say? What would you say to the people who have not been on or 60s? They're in their 60s and they're like, "Oh, no, no."
We need hormones our entire life. The minute we lose the hormones, our bodies start disintegrating, excuse me. And so uh, that's such a myth. It really is. And it's a tragic myth because I just, every single time I hear of a hip replacement, I know it's lack of estrogen. I know it. And we need to, and they still won't have enough estrogen, uh, even with the new hip, because they still have problems. Uh, we were so well designed. The hormones we have are so perfect. They all blend together. They all have their own jobs to do throughout the entire body. And uh, when we don't honor that, we really suffer. And I'm really sad that so many people suffer. I just had a girlfriend of mine, same age as I am, call me saying her sisters died, her brothers died. You know, we are not being treated in a way that will promote our longevity and as well as the quality of life in that longevity. So I am very grateful for my education. I'm very grateful for the instructors that I had uh, in the colleges that taught the truth about the body, but they could teach the truth about the body because they were taught the truth. They're no longer being taught the truth. This is what's tragic. Uh, I was asked to teach a biopsychology class at the university that's across the freeway from me, and I got all excited about it until I realized they were supposed to have had basic chemistry, basic biology. They're no longer teaching basic chemistry or basic biology. In fact, I was in a continuing education class to keep my license going here in California, and a woman came up to me, hands me her card. She goes, "I'm with Quest Laboratories, and I want you to work for me." And I said, "Do you have any idea how old I am?" And she goes, "Yes, I do. I want you because you have the foundation and none of the new people have it. We're not teaching our kids. It's a tragedy." And my grandson asked me to help him with high school chemistry when he signed up for that. And the textbook was Obama's Common Core textbook. The chemistry titles were on the chapters, but the text was how bad America is and how we pollute the world. That was the text. It's no wonder they don't know chemistry because they're not being taught it. And this woman from Quest Labs sees it. But what's scary is these are our new doctors, these are our new dentists, these are our new people who don't have the foundation. And we're just falling down horribly as far as teaching the truth. I've still got my husband built a whole wall of my books, all my books from all my classes. I still got all those textbooks, and they're valuable because that's not what's in the books anymore.
There are people doing one of my clients a couple years ago in my mastermind, she's a integrative nutritionist, but really focusing on hormones. And there was a study that just got done. I think it was a 50-year study that got published maybe a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago at this point, that showed that actually it was the reverse, that not having balanced hormones caused cancer, not replacing them.
Oh, absolutely. I totally believe that. I really do. Our bodies were so well designed. We were supposed to have what we're supposed to have. And to remove them, to remove organs. I don't believe in organ removal at all anymore. I really don't. It just because, you know, my 7 surgeries have taught me that those organs aren't expendable. They were really not. And I'm I'm still suffering with trying to help my body with supplements to make up for not having, my gallbladder, not having my all that I lost, the ovaries and the uterus, and so American medicine has thought they were gods, that they could remove organs, and uh, and they shouldn't. They really shouldn't. That's why I love Tibetan medicine, because they believe in finding the cause and then fixing the cause instead of, oh, let's just remove it.
Well, I've mentioned the show before for anyone. It's on Hulu, or at least it was. It's called Dope Sick. Did you ever see it? It actually was running during the pandemic, which kind of made me laugh because it was literally about the opioid crisis and was it the set, what family, the family that created that drug and how people got addicted to it. Having whatever. Anyway, Hulu did it. It was during the pandemic, so it showed the relationship between doctors and pharmaceutical companies and how the doctors were just told, here, give them this, prescribe this amount, and after they get used to it, they adapt, give them more. Sackler, the Sackler family, right? That was so. But you watch it, and I'm literally like, hello, we're living this right now, but why can't anybody see it? We're literally living it, where someone is pressuring you. You're believing what they're being told, not realizing that they'll lose their license if they don't do what they're told. And they're not questioning it. Well, maybe they are, but the majority of people were doing it anyway because they would lose their license. They were threatened with losing their license if they didn't prescribe what they were supposed to by both the government and the board and everyone that's in charge. But it was one of those like twilight moments for me, because I'm watching it going, why is nobody paying attention to this? It's happening right now under your nose and you're not even getting it. It's like
Right.
when we're in it, we can't see it, but we can make a movie about it when it's done and go, oh yeah, it was so clear. But literally it was happening right then and there.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I really do. I just, people in my family, when I would tell them what I felt they needed to do, well, I'll ask my doctor. That's the response I would get from them. It was just, and of course, they're all dead now. They've all died. That it's just, uh, it's really hard. It's so indoctrinated that to believe what the doctor says.
Yeah. Well, again, when we look at original, like even with the food industry, and people say, well, when I ate it 30 years ago, it wasn't a problem. Right. Well, 30 years ago, the recipes were different than they are now. The ingredients for some basic things that we used to have is much different now than it was, based on the chemicals that we spray, based on the genetic modification that we do, based on the fillers that we use, so there's so many, people oversimplify because because you know why? It's hard. That's why, because it makes you responsible for having to pay attention and make changes that are uncomfortable because you like your routine. And not everyone, I have done a really good job. I have a friend who I just learned had breast cancer. I guess, again, I didn't know she had it the first time. And she doesn't know everything that I do. And I had to hold back and restrain from like fire, like boom boom boom, blasting her with everything. I gave her 2 episodes and 2 books. That's all. And I sent the emotional root cause of breast cancer. That's all I did. So that's 2 pages out of the book about the emotional root of breast cancer, and then 2 books and 2 podcasts. That's it. And I stopped. I said, I'm refraining myself. Like, if you want more, I have great experience with this. I have worked with this. I understand this. I've helped with this. So, and then I'm backing off. But not everybody wants the help, because not everybody, one of my friends who has a podcast called Food Heals, both her parents died of cancer. And when her mom died of cancer, it was life-changing for her. And then when her dad got cancer, she had become vegan, okay. And then she like had her juices, and she's trying to get her dad to clean up, and he smoked. He was trying to get her dad to clean up his lifestyle, and he just didn't want to do it. And that's somebody's right to say, no, I don't want to work that hard. And if I'm going to die early, then that's fine. My neighbor she's taking drugs to help with pain because it makes her feel alive instead of having all the pain that she has. And she said, look, if I die because, okay, because I'd rather die and be living than the pain she was been in for a long time. So she didn't want to tell me what she was taking because she was afraid I was going to yell at her. But she's 83. She's 83 and she's had this pain for like more than 6 months. and it's debilitating. So, people make choices, and it's not our job. I'm not judging people by saying, hey, if you want to do whatever you want to do, you want to do all the things that your doctor tells you. But then when you don't complain, when you're not any better or you're worse, like it's not, you have to take responsibility for learning something. Like, please learn something. Please research more things, ask questions, don't blindly just say yes and accept things. Find out how things work, especially when you're in a situation where something you've tried hasn't worked, but the doctor keeps saying try it again, or maybe try this. Well, okay, hold on, let me understand how this works, because most people can learn things. We have the ability to learn. So, a little bit at a time. It's not, doesn't have to be so overwhelming. Just whatever you're dealing with, ask different questions. Go to the opposite side of what you normally believe and try it on. It can't hurt necessarily, especially when most alternative medicines don't have side effects like Western medicine does, right?
Right. That's true. Very true. And the side effects from like the statin drugs that we started with, it, it it's a whole bunch of side effects that they don't talk about. And and that doesn't come into the conversation of asking people if they want to take the statin drugs or not. But the absurdity is that 99% of the people don't need them because I'm sure their cholesterol norms were normal.
Well,
They
normal based on the old
exactly
standard, which was
right,
250 to 240 to 280.
right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's just,
All right.
I'm
Well,
very glad I was born when I was born, actually, because I was able to see the truth of a lot of things that people can't see the truth anymore.
Well, they don't know it because they didn't know it then. Like, right, you mentioned it to me at a time where I was like, "Oh, let's talk about that," because I don't have the experience of ever seeing 240 to 280 on a blood form that says normal and healthy, but you do, right? And then
Right,
being able to see, well, what changed? Well, they wanted to sell people statin drugs, so they lowered it so that everybody would be high, so that everybody would need a statin drug, right?
right. And now we have a bunch of people really sick from not enough cholesterol in their body, not enough hormones. It's just it's like a, a downward spiral when they start on statin drugs. It's to me it's a crime.
It
Really.
is. It is. But I think there's I think that when we can't just be victims to it, right? So, and there are things that are not necessarily going to change. Like if the there's so many people, we are the minority. The majority of people are going to believe their doctors. They're not going to change their diet and lifestyle. They're going to do whatever they're told. That's a fact. We are the outliers of the 10 or 20% of people who question, who are curious, who are kind of a little bit more futuristic thinking and
Mhm.
advocate and want to know a little bit deeper. We don't just take what someone says is, doesn't matter who it is. You question it and you go, is this the right thing? I don't know. How do I feel about this? Does this make sense to me? What did 10 other people say? Because I mean, after I had three doctors tell me about getting a hysterectomy, and I was just like you've had your surgeries. I was standing there bawling my eyes out, making the appointment, and I had to like have an out of body experience and said, JJ, hello, do you see yourself? Like you are not in alignment with this. When
Wow.
you are not in alignment with this, if your spirit, if your body was congruent with this decision, you would feel relief, not fear and defeat. But I felt fear and defeat because my body was trying to tell me this is not the path for you, even though three doctors have told you this and that there's no other option. This is clearly your body's speaking. Pay attention. You're crying, but I was overriding it, and then I canceled the appointment and then never went back. But it took me to be in that office to understand that I wasn't feeling relief. So there are times where people are going to do things that I wouldn't do, but it will work for them because their body says, no, this is the path. I will feel relief when I do this. It's not, we don't all end up in the same place because there's so many, multifactorial as to how we get where we get. But at least
Right.
I'd like people to hear from someone who was has seen the change, was there during the time where it moved and why, and the introduction of statin drugs, and then that's why it got lowered. But and we're going to talk about this more. I will reach out to the doctors to have them on because even though I learned this 15 or 20 years ago, apparently people still don't know it. So it's time to put it into mass mainstream a little bit more as we're now starting to question more things. So I want to leave people with how to work with you and what you do for them. Obviously, there's some books that people can buy from you. I know you've got products that also support electromagnetic frequency and stuff like that. But how would someone reach out? Tell us your website. What do you help them with?
Our website is bestemfproducts.com. So what we've kind of done is focus down into that. We've had websites for the hormones, etc. But right now, the vast majority of people need help with the electromagnetic radiation. People call and they're totally miserable. They haven't slept in months, and it's a crime what's happening. The new cell phones are totally way too toxic. I hate to see kids with them at all because they're so toxic. And so bestemfproducts.com. All 5 books that I've written are on there, and each book was it's like God was telling me, you write this. And I was trying to fight it, and just really, it was difficult. I still was scared to bring out these books. The day my first book was delivered to the house, I ran in the backyard and hid because it meant that I had to get up in front of people and tell people, who I am and what I've been doing. But it's so rewarding when I have so many people call and say, you saved my life. You saved my life. I hear it over and over and over again because doctors aren't trained. They've been to 25 doctors, and we really need to get away from the radiation. All the new cell towers are just abomination on our whole country because they're all across the country. And when we think about where do we want to move to out of Southern California, because there's so many here, within 3 miles of our house, there's 1,788 antenna. So it's just really way too massive. I feel it when we come here. I feel the relief when we go to out in the desert where there's not all that. So it's really not good to be exposed to this much radiation. It's harming us. It's especially harming our kids. Our kids are just way too susceptible to it. Their brains are smaller. They have less body weight, and they are going to be really harmed in a lot of ways if we don't stop the insanity of the stupid pressure of all the cell phones and all the top towers. It's just we're across the street from a big park where the kids play lots of games. There's 3 antenna. There's 3 antenna on that park. Yeah. And then just right next to that, the high school, there's an antenna in the gymnasium. So, and in California, there's an antenna in almost every high school. And part of my book on the radiation, a mother called me who had lost her child when they put smart meters and radiation in the classrooms and demanded to use radiation for the textbooks. And her daughter couldn't tolerate it. And she called me. Her daughter died because the school didn't understand that the daughter was so sensitive. And I get husbands and wives. One will be sensitive, one won't. They don't understand each other. The person who's sensitive is being told you're crazy. And it's creating a huge turmoil in our society because it's no fun being sensitive. It's really not. And that movie that I talked about, have fun, don't die. He gets sent an electronic device, and his wife comes home and her nose starts bleeding. Bleeding is part of the symptomology from the radiation. We need to wake up that we're really being harmed in such a horrible way. We really are. So, and it's fun to help husbands and wives, help them understand the one who's sick is really sick. It's not just an act. It's that their bodies can't take it, and it's because they've had toxins, lots of toxins, or just been exposed. And that was my problem. I was into computers my entire work life, and so I know that's why I was so sensitive. And I'm very grateful to the products that I use. They're for changing the radiation coming off the cell phone or the smart meter or the computer to be a human compatible vibration. So very different than a lot of other things that are on the market. We actually had the things disconnected in our car, the rear bumpers and all that. We had all that disconnected. We had to get permission from the manufacturers as long as it didn't interfere with the performance of the car. But it's so worth to get it off of the car because there's no need to have backup sensors. We've been backing up for a long time with cars. So we need to wake up that we don't need all these electronic things. We're harming ourselves. It's not worth it.
Okay. Well, I'll
So
make sure everyone checks out bestemfproducts.com and all the books that you have. And obviously they can contact you if they want to work with you on figuring out
please,
what's going on with them. And is that also contact on the website, or do you want to give them a different way?
that's on the website too. You can reach me. And yeah, I'm glad to. I have a 6-page profile I have people fill out because I've really, over the 20 years I've been doing consulting, I kept adding questions because I realized the next person, oh, gee, I also need to know this. And so it's really fun to do it because I help people so much, and people are so grateful for understanding that there is something that they can do about their problems, and they're available. So
Great.
uh,
Well, hopefully, if you're listening to this or you know someone who needs this information, please send them the show. Although, of course, ask permission first. If they're interested, tell them you may have a solution for what they're dealing with, whether it be statin drugs, hormones, cancer, EMF, skin cancer. Maybe they don't realize, maybe something they haven't found a solution to whatever they're dealing with. And this gives us a couple other things to talk about and to look at. So thank you, Dr. Plourde, for coming back on the show after 10 years. It's been 10 years since you've been here, so I appreciate you coming back.
thank you so much for inviting me because I feel like I'm bursting with all the things that I need to tell people, want to tell people. And so thank you for allowing me to do that. So you're doing a great service.
Thank you.